What's going on, everybody? We are back. We got episode number 179 of the Club and Sub podcast. If you like the show, please drop a like, subscribe. It would help us out. As usual, you got me, John, at MMA Fox, Lags, at Danny_Lags, back in the building with us tonight. And I am not sick anymore, so my head might be completely in it. I don't know if we want to really talk about last week's card or not. I got buried in part because half my exposure, I had just about 5 units on Piero Rodriguez. So, yeah, that was a fun one. I would have lost, I think, 1.4 units had, she not decided to just multiple times headbutt Ariane Carnolisi when she was half knocked out. But she did. So instead, I lost about 9.3 units on the card. So, it wasn't a fun one. But yeah, we don't need to get into it. We have I can't even really get that excited about this pay-per-view. We were just talking about it a bit. What are your thoughts on it? There's not a lot that's super intriguing to me on it.
So the only thing that I would say, I know, we talked about, it's not super intriguing, but I will say it's at least name worthy, name value worthy. You have a lot of, like I said, Almeida, Romanov, Holland, Mikey O, you got Costa and Strickland in the co-main event. You obviously have the main event, Poirier and Islam, a lot of big names on the main card.
It's almost like a showcasing of prospects that didn't kind of live up to their talent. We got Kevin Holland, Randy Brown, Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, Paulo Costa, Jailton Almeida, Alexander Romanov, bunch of guys who all had huge hype at some point, but never ever really meaning. Other than I guess Jailton is a bit early to say he hasn't quite lived up to the hype, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, look, we're gonna watch it. There should be live betting opportunities. I made one pre-bet, and that line's been smoked. I might make a couple others. We'll talk about it, but I really just don't really like this card much at all. So yeah, I mean, without further ado, let's get into it. First fight of the night, Andre Lima. He's taking Mitch Raposo. Current price on Lima is minus 260. To come back on Raposo, plus 220. I don't have much interest here. Even though I have some general skepticism about Andre Lima's game, I don't really think Mitch Raposo is the kind of guy who's going to ask big questions of him. Raposo's a wrestler, and I guess there's some grappling concerns with Lima, but I don't think Raposo's a great wrestler. I don't think he's particularly physical, which is what I kind of think you need to be with Lima, is be able to bully him back, and he can't really do that. On the feet, Raposo's an okay striker, but no power, not assertive, kind of slow. And Lima, he's got decent hardware. He's durable, hits very, very hard, high output. I just look at it and I feel like there's going to come a time to fade Andre Lima, but when I think about what a Raposo win would look like, I kind of am I guess luring Lima into a low volume fight where maybe he gets, a couple late takedowns and steals a close decision. I can't really imagine many iterations in this fight where we're oh my God, Raposo was huge value. Whereas I can imagine some iterations where Lima just walks him down, walks through him and puts him out. So yeah, I mean, I think the line is probably fine. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, similar thoughts. I think if you're going to fade a guy with Lima, in a guy like Lima, you need a much better grappler, much better wrestler. And Raposo, I mean, decently well-rounded, decent boxer, decent wrestling, but just not the caliber, I think, to trouble Lima in any aspect, really. So I think Lima as a parlay piece is pretty safe this week.
Yeah, I actually tend to agree with that. Moving on, Jocelyn Edwards taking on Aileen Perez. Current price, Perez minus 185. The comeback on Edwards is plus 160. What are your thoughts here?
Now, somebody whose wrestling I do value would be Aileen Perez in this spot, though, unlike the last spot with Raposo. And to me, I just don't think her floor can be much lower than her current price, given the fact that I think Perez is likely to win round one at a high clip. The grappling edge to me is just so massive that I could see her being a massive favorite, whereas Edwards, I could see her maybe being plus 130, plus her current price, maybe. It's I understand the early pokes near 2-1, but I think Perez largely just out-grapples her.
Yeah, it's one of those fights, on Narco's Discord spaces a couple weeks back, someone mentioned that they had heard Edwards had given Perez the business, in training together. And so I was pretty hot to trot to come out there and bet Edwards. And then I looked at it and I just, like you said, I just don't think, I think the floor of Perez is pretty high. And I think the ceiling of Edwards isn't really that high in this fight. I don't really rate Perez super highly at anything, but she's strong. She's an okay wrestler and she goes for it aggressively. And so far, we just haven't really seen Jocelyn Edwards show us that she can work up off bottom. She just hasn't been able to. I mean, we saw Lucy Pudilova control her for 8 minutes. We saw Jessica Rose Clark and Carol Hossa both get tons of top time against her. And I think Perez, I don't think she's a great wrestler, but I think she's slightly above average for women's. And I think that's probably better than those women who took her down and held her down. And she's more physical than those women are. So I feel like Perez is going to very likely get takedowns here and a ton of top time. The big question with Perez is just, is she going to gas out and possibly get finished down the stretch? Because that's always a real concern with her because I don't trust her gas tank. And if she can't just bully, she doesn't have a lot else going for her. My issue is I just don't think Edwards has enough off her back to, lead her to using that energy. If Edwards was someone who was going to get taken down 10 times, but she'd get up 10 times, I'd actually have some interest at the price because I think Perez is so deficient in her other areas. But Edwards just kind of is a squid who just kind of like flops around like when you get her down and doesn't do a whole lot. So yeah, I'm with you. I think if anything, maybe there's a tad bit of value on Perez, but I don't really have much interest in laying, a Perez chalk number, so.
And I was say last thing to add too, I don't think Edwards has great cardio herself. So I don't see
she doesn't.
Crazy like tables turning like in the back half of the fight. So yep.
We have another fight like that we're about to discuss here.
We do.
We got Mickey Gall take the exact same fight, taking on Basil Hafez. Current price, Hafez minus 350. Come back on Gall plus 285. I mean, it's Gall or pass, but at the money line, but I don't really have much interest in Gall. I really tried very hard to talk myself into betting Gall here. And I've still been trying, but I just ultimately can't get there. The thing is, I'm fairly certain the market is dramatically overpricing Hafez off his performance against Jack. But, I mean, I bet Hafez there. That seemed, that dynamic just seemed extremely stylistically favorable for him. And, while he was fresh, he performed well against Jack. But I also think he's getting a little bit too much credit for that fight because, I mean, the only reason that was even a split decision is because Jack kept trying to jump guillotines on him. By the start of round 2, Hafez's takedowns were dreadful. Like nothing was getting close. He just needed Jack to keep trying to counter grapple and put himself in bad positions. If Jack fights intelligently on the back end of that fight, he probably looks the price he was pre-fight, to be frank. With respect to this fight, I think that could still be the case. I think Hafez is a terrible gasser. I think he's extremely vulnerable to getting hit on the feet. I think if he tries to power wrestle past around, he's very, very likely to slow down. And so, theoretically, you'd have interest in Gall with that dynamic. The problem is, I have a couple problems with Gall. One, the guy plays guard. He's very, very easy to hold down once you get him there. So, it's like if Hafez hits takedowns, he's probably going to control him. Two, I think Gall is pretty fragile himself. Like I think Gall. Thank you for your service, Legs, from Pepe. You do look like a Marine right now.
I've actually been told that at Sheets multiple times with other buddies. They're like, "Are you guys all coming back from service?" I'm like, no. It's like no.
You and John Kelly would be together. Maybe calling you the military man. Obviously joking. And yeah, thank you for your service, John Kelly. Actually, in seriousness. But anyway, I do think Gall is the better striker. The problem is, I don't think he's defensively savvy enough to not take some shots in return, when he's exchanging with Hafez. And I think he's very, very fragile. He just doesn't react to getting hit well at all. And then, in theoretically, the place most people are going to have their biggest edge against Hafez is the cardio. And Gall's cardio is dreadful. Like absolutely dreadful, The guy has gassed at zero pace multiple times. And so Gull's got more UFC experience. He's got multiple UFC wins. I could see Hafez taking one of his lazy shots on the back end and Gull converting like multiple back takes. Because when he does shoot late, he does tend to come up very, very short, and that could be a recipe for disaster. But I just feel like if Gull's going to gas out, there's just so much equity for Hafez top time. There's equity for a KO. I do kind of think the price is wide just because I'm not really sold on Hafez being a UFC caliber fighter, but man, when you look at the career of Mickey Gall, it's like, did he beat any UFC caliber fighters? Not really.
He's not a UFC caliber fighter himself.
I mean, let's go through it right now, right? I mean, he's 7-5, which I mean, he's had 10 fights in the UFC, so I can respect that a bit. But here are his wins: Jordan Williams, not in the UFC anymore, and that's probably his best win of his career. Salim Touari, 1 fight and done. George Sullivan, who was like 45 years old at the end of his run. Sage Northcutt, cut shortly thereafter. CM Punk, Lel. Mike Jackson, a journalist. I mean, it's just, yeah. I think the line's probably close to fine. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, similar thoughts here. I think that Hafez can get the wrestling going here and grappling going here. And to your last point there with the cardio, that's really where the big gap or the big glaring path for Gull would be here. But yeah, I just don't see it. I think you would have to sub him personally. I think Hafez's durability is pretty solid on the feet, and yeah, I think he can land takedowns pretty easily. Now, the last thing I was going to note too isn't he a bigger favorite now than Morono was over Gull?
Yeah, Morono was only minus 200, which is kind of crazy when you think about it.
But then you also think Morono's not going to grapple as hard as Hafez likely is.
Yeah, Pepe just said Hafez would be Gull's worst loss, but also his best win, which is 100% accurate. No, but I mean, from a market analysis standpoint, that's true. But also, I feel like we have enough data on Gull now to say pretty definitively he's, kind of a bottom of the barrel fighter, So
yeah,
I think the ideal outcome here is a Hafez clear win, and hopefully a better fade comes along down the road, because I think it will eventually. The original booking, Preston Parsons, I was very, very intrigued by against Hafez, but that's because Parsons is a dog with good cardio and strong durability. Gull has neither of those attributes. So,
yep,
here we are.
Anyway,
speaking of Alex Morono,
the great white.
Throw it to you here, Lags. We got the hybrid, Nico Price, with no legs and no knees. Take it on Alex Morono. The current price, Morono minus 250. The comeback on Price plus 210. What are your thoughts?
No legs, no knees, no chin, but he's got a lot of kids. He is not part of the semen retention club here.
He is not. He's investing heavily into his balls.
He is. Good for him. Great for him. Great for the family.
Dude, I have 2 kids. I don't know how good for him 7 kids is.
Or his wife.
Yes.
Man. I think Morono and the chalk, I think, is more than justified here. I think him being a big favorite is fine because, I mean, Price has looked pretty decrepit lately. He's lost all of his power and physicality to me. So I think Morono should be able to just volume him up, have the better cardio here across 15. And he could potentially finish him also. Because like I mentioned, I don't think Price's chin these days looks that good.
Yeah, it's another fight where I was pretty keen to bet Price going into tapes because they've obviously fought before back in the day. Price knocked him out. And, Alex Morono has outperformed what his athletic ceiling should have been in the UFC.
He's a bag of milk.
And so, yeah, he is. That's, our boy Sean always says he is a bag of milk. The guy is a very, very soft physical build, but he's made the most of it. It's kind of similar to a Bilal Muhammad. I mean, he's worse than Bilal, obviously, but by that I mean, the guy is absolutely maximized what his potential ceiling could be. But because of that, I was kind of interested in Price because, Price's biggest advantages have always been physical in nature. Speed, power, the ability to finish anybody or get finished himself. But against a guy like Morono, that kind of intrigued me. But I mean, watching his fights coming back post-surgery, especially that Phil Rowe fight, who we'll talk about on this card as well, but he's just not the same guy. The explosion isn't there. He did hurt Rowe in that fight at the end of the fight, but he doesn't seem to have the same pop. He doesn't close distance the same way. The one thing I'll give him credit for that could maybe benefit him a bit here is he does still throw a lot of output. Like he throws a ton of strikes, which is obviously always a helpful thing. But the thing is, it's so much, like he's going to have a very, very hard time against guys kind of in this tier of fighter getting to them before they get to him, just because he's so slow these days and he's so easy to crack. With that said, like I can imagine a world where he bonks Morono in the first round here. Like I could imagine it. I think he still carries some power, if not the same that he used to have. And Morono, he's taken some damage recently, if we're being honest. You know, he's taken a fair amount of damage recently. But at the same time, I just don't think it happens at a super high clip. And you mentioned it. I think the cardio dynamic kind of rears its head as it goes on. And I actually think Morono is going to hurt him a bit too. Price's durability is pretty clearly declining. And, you know, despite his athletic limitations, something I will say for Morono is he's always had underrated power. You know, he's hurt a bunch of guys. He's dropped a bunch of guys. So, yeah, I mean, Morono at least is still showing a capability to compete with top 20 to 30 guys, whereas to me, at least, by the eye test, you know, Nico Price just seems like a fighter who just doesn't really have it anymore. I was talking with someone earlier who mentioned he's very, very invested in the landscaping company he owns. Obviously, he had major knee surgeries on both knees. He's older. He's got all those kids. It feels like his swan song here, so... yeah, I mean, I think Morono should handle him. What's going on, Glimbot, in the chat? Moving on. Phil Rowe, who we were just talking about, taking on Jake Matthews. Current price on Matthews, minus 160. The comeback on Rowe, plus 140. If I knew what IQ Jake Matthews would show up with to this fight, I would bet Jake Matthews in this fight. Okay. You know, it's a... It is a fight that Jake Matthews has every tool he needs to win this fight easily. He has a grappling path that's open to him if he takes it, because Phil Rowe, you know, I know he's got decent jiu-jitsu, but when he's been grounded, man, the guy's really got nothing on bottom. He's got a leg kick path. Phil Rowe, super fragile to the legs, and Jake does throw pretty hard leg kicks. Or frankly, I think he can win I think he's probably the best. I shouldn't even say probably. He is the better distance striker. The thing is, I think he's going to take the path of most resistance and box with Rowe. And while I think Matthews is a bit more assertive and technically better, I do worry a bit about that because he's giving away 4 inches of height and like 7 inches of reach here. It's a big reach disadvantage. And for all of Rowe's flaws, he's low volume. His defense is really not good when he gets in the pocket. He's pretty bad on bottom. He does hit pretty hard, and if you get into extended combinations with him, he will touch you up a bit. So I think Matthews is going to make it as hard as he possibly can on himself here. But even with that being the case, I just think he's the much better fighter. I think he's a much slicker boxer, to be honest. You know, Matthews actually can, you know, slip a jab and counter, whereas Phil Rowe just entirely relies on his like length. If you get inside on him, this guy's there to be cracked. Matthews obviously the much more experienced fighter. He's been in the UFC for much longer. He's also like 5 years younger than Rowe, who's like sneakily approaching 34 years old. Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to bet Jake Matthews minus 160. If we get buyback on Rowe back to like, you know, Matthews to the minus, I don't know, somewhere between 125 and 40, maybe I would take a poke at Matthews here because I do think Matthews really should win this fight. But at the same time, I feel I underrate physical intangibles like way too often, and Rowe obviously has considerable ones. What do you think?
I'd bet him at 140 personally.
You did bet him?
I said I would bet him. Sorry, I would bet him if he got back to 140. Because I think the line where it's at now, I think is fine. And if I knew he would grapple, I think the line where it's at would be pretty big value, personally.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's not much else to say on the fight, personally. I don't know what you think.
No, I do agree. I feel if you were to make a distribution chart of, you know, hindsight outcomes, Matthews has big favorite upside, whereas Rowe's is really kind of like pick. I can't imagine Rowe, even if everybody is capping this fight wrong that we know, I can't imagine Rowe being past Pick'em in this fight just because Matthews, he's stronger, more physical, he's just a better fighter. So Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it should be Jake, but at minus 160.
It's just not something I'm totally interested in at 160. The only other thing I was going to add to it completely slipped my mind there was I feel like a lot of people are like overrating the fact that it was a close fight with Neil Magny. Whereas like close fight in this age with Neil Magny, like Neil's not exactly looking his best either. Like I don't think it was a great performance either. It was.
I bet Magny. So so it's funny you say that because I recall because I bet we both bet Magny and I remember the fight being close going into tape and I was thinking I'm like man everybody like all these people we know like Matthews what am I missing and then you rewatch it and it's just like no Magny just looked like shit and still I don't want to say he won a convincing decision but he won it solidly nonetheless so yeah I'm with you. Moving on, this is my only bet of the night. Although I can't even really give it out. We have Grant Dawson, Joe Selecki. Current price, ridiculous if we're being honest. Dawson's minus 520 to come back on Selecki's plus 395. I took a bunch of early Dawson under minus 300, but I mean, there's no value on this line. If anything, I would say we're probably approaching the range where there may well be value on the Selecki side. To be frank, I'm not sure. Like I personally capped Dawson in like the 350 to 400 range here. I think 77 to 80% is probably, fine. From the way I just view it here is I feel maybe Selecki could outstrike him. He's probably a better striker than Dawson is. He's probably a better striker than Dawson, but Dawson's taller, he's longer. His striking is kind of janky and hard to deal with if you're not a really good striker. And Selecki is not a really good striker. But at the end of the day, the reason I don't lay chalk like this often and the reason I laid the chalk on Dawson is just, Grant Dawson knows what he's good at. He knows he's not a striker. He knows he needs to come out there and take you down and grind you. Theoretically, or not theoretically, Selecki's base is a grappling base, but he's the far worse wrestler in this matchup. He's the worst athlete. He's the weaker of the two. And every time Selecki's been put flat on his back in the UFC, he has been pretty happy to just play guard. And he doesn't get off his back. Jim Miller held him down for 3 minutes, won the first round against him in their fight. Jared Gordon held him down for about 4 minutes. Alex Da Silva held him down for about 4.5 minutes. That's an interesting question. We got a Selecki finish only plus 275. Well, so here's my thing. I feel look, if they were wearing gis and they were doing like competition jiu-jitsu, you'd probably favor Selecki because like that's kind of his specialty. But Dawson's a black belt as well. I do think it's within the realm of possible outcomes that Dawson could make a mistake in round 1 or round 2 and end up with Selecki with a body triangle on his back, which would be quite bad for me, obviously, if that happened. Right. But I kind of think that's how Selecki wins the fight, because I don't think he's going to – I'm almost positive he's not going to out-wrestle Dawson or like process grapple Dawson from like chest to chest. Whereas I'm also almost positive when Dawson gets him down, he's going to control him there. I know Selecki's jiu-jitsu pedigree. His guard doesn't look that dangerous to me from an MMA context. And Dawson's a much better control grappler than the guys that have held him down. So yeah, I mean, I think Dawson, I just kind of view it as a low variance fight. I don't think either is very likely to get a KO on the feet. And I think the better athlete, better wrestler with better control against the guy that plays guard is just going to win this fight at a very, very high clip. In terms of Selecki finish only, my view, and Lags, I'll let you go after this. Like my view is Selecki could snatch a back take or a guillotine, but the dude does get tired, man, in almost every fight. And Dawson, he's known for his jiu-jitsu, but when he has top position, he throws pretty heavy ground and pound. I think that's probably fine, to be honest, because I think there are worlds where Dawson knocks him out down the stretch. Glenbot even posted 16-1 and 22-1, 2-3 KO. I think are interesting looks here. What do you think, Legs, on the fight and on, that conversation?
Well, on that first, I think I kind of like you mentioned, I think Dawson is much more alive to finish this fight in the back half of this fight than Selecki is catching him early because of that cardio. But no, I mean, I more or less agree here as well. I mean, this is fairly similar to the fight where you laid big chalk with Loopy versus Elise Reed. I mean, it's pretty much the similar dynamic there. Massive wrestling path, not going to get have too much trouble on the feet. Should be able to, settle down in top time, no problem. Probably can finish as well.
I mean, if Joe Selecki knocks him out standings, we have bigger questions to ask about Grant Dawson. That's all I'm going to say. Like, I felt both Madsen and Gordon and Leonardo Santos were all much more physically equipped to deal with Dawson, to like counter Dawson. And he absolutely fucked on Madsen. Santos gave him some issues, but Gordon, it was a fun fight, but he mostly, he won the fight clearly, obviously. So, yeah, I just don't see it with Selecki, frankly. Moving on, though, I have some thoughts here. I'm curious what your thoughts are on it, Lags. I think this is one of the most hotly, well, I don't even know if it's hotly debated. I think every single person I know has bet Cesar Almeida here. And the current price is Cesar Almeida minus 124, and the comeback on Roman Kopylov is plus 104. What do you think here?
I did bet Cesar Almeida as well. I bet him at plus 105 for a unit and a half. I guess I'll keep it kind of brief. I just think I'm getting the better striker, the more durable striker, and the guy with better cardio. I think it's largely going to stay standing for 15. I don't think Kopylov's going to have any grappling success at all, even if he does try. So, yeah.
I don't think if Kopylov tries to grapple, he's gonna gas out and get finished. That's what'll happen. I have considered. I'd probably wanted to move out more to bet the Kopylov side, but I have considered Kopylov just because I don't even disagree with a lot of what you're saying or many of the people I know that are betting Almeida are saying. He obviously has a cardio advantage. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, he comes from a very decorated kickboxing background. But I do think, two things stand out to me that concern me. For one, we have seen some kickboxers make the jump successfully. Alex Pereira, Israel Adesanya. The one thing I'll say about both of them, Pereira's case, the man is a giant human being with freak athleticism and freak power. And in Adesanya's case, the guy was training to get into MMA for about 5 years before he did. And he's got a stupid frame for middleweight, too. He's like 6'4" with an 81-inch reach or something crazy like that. Whereas Almeida, he was an elite kickboxer in glory, like no doubt about it. But at the same time, he doesn't have the frame those guys have. He's 36 years old, which also kind of concerns me. And you look at the two fights he won on Contenders and in the UFC, and he's basically won them via just counter grappling. When you go back and watch that Contenders fight against Lucas Fernando, Fernando's a striker who kept trying to grapple him. But when they were striking, Fernando was getting the better of most of those exchanges. Now, do I think Lucas Fernando's a better striker than Cesar Almeida? Obviously not. But the point that I'm making is he is older, and I do think his age is starting to show a bit. Whereas, Kopylov's 33. He's not super young, but he is very, very fast. He's a bit taller and a bit longer. And, yeah, I don't know. Kopylov is a lot more tested in an MMA context. He's tested against better strikers in MMA than Almeida has been. I think he's going to be a lot faster than Almeida while they're fresh. Ultimately, I see the angle on Almeida because I do think Kopylov will lose round 3 at a tremendous clip or potentially get finished. I just kind of feel like the market might just be underrating Kopylov's experience, speed, and just general danger and body kick. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting fight. I think it's close to a pick'em fight, to be honest. That's about how I view pick'em to slight lean Kopylov for me. But I think Kopylov can win this fight. I don't know. I kind of side that way. If it gets to plus 120 by fight time, I'll probably have a bet there.
Fair enough.
Moving on, though, we have I guess this is the main card opener here. We got Randy Brown taking on Oleksiejczuk dos Santos. Current price on Brown minus 175. The comeback on dos Santos plus 150. What are your thoughts here, Lags?
Reminds me a lot of the Jake Matthews fight. Randy Brown probably has all the tools to win this fight. Kind of depends on how he approaches it. I'm more or less, I think Randy probably does win a decision. I think his length and reach probably will just give Oleksiejczuk issues, but I think more often than not, it just ends up being a close fight.
Yeah, that's I was leaning toward making a Brown bet early last week. And the more I thought about it and the more I looked about it, I kind of came down where you are. I can't bet Oleksiejczuk here just because, he's a lot older than Brown is. He's giving up tremendous physical disadvantages here. The height. Brown's a lot taller, a lot longer. I Zaleski's not going to grapple him, he's not going to go down and get top time. So can he outstrike Brown? I think so. I think he can. The question is, how likely is it? Because Brown's, if you're not killing him to the calf, he's kind of hard to outstrike. Not many guys have done it. Brown, outstruck Chaos Williams fairly easily, outstruck Jared Gooden fairly easily. I think Zaleski can hang with him, but I do think, when you're trying to put a number on it, it's like, is Zaleski pick him? I don't think so. I think kind of the age and physical intangibles lean Brown's way either way. And then plus he has to deal with the size and the length. Brown seems to still be improving a bit, whereas Zaleski does. I mean, he's obviously not improving at this point. If anything, he's getting a bit worse. Pepe said Brown KO, thank me later. I actually think that's an interesting take because, Zaleski, he's only been knocked out once in the UFC, but he's gotten hurt a bunch, and he seems to be getting hurt more and more, with each passing fight. And so that's the other thing. I think Brown's got a lot more finishing upside. He can finish on the ground or on the feet here. I really don't think Zaleski finishing is very likely. So all in, the price seems fine to me. I don't think I'm going to take a side. Yeah. Moving on, though, we have Kevin Holland taking on – oh, no, missed the fight. Jailton Almeida taking on Alexander Romanov. Current price, Jailton Almeida minus 310. Comeback on Romanov plus 260. I'm of a couple minds with this fight. Obviously, I gave a 10-minute breakdown on Blades Almeida last time we did this. I'm not going to give a 10-minute breakdown here because my view. I do think this could go not one of two ways. It could obviously go more than two ways, but I think if Alexander Romanov has a pretty clear path if he takes it, which is coming out and wrestling Jailton. I actually thought that about Blades too. When I mentioned it, I thought Blades would be smart to not let Almeida bully him back, to go forward and take him down. Just because I still get, man, really weird vibes from Jailton Almeida. The guy seems pretty wilty when he gets put on bottom. Even the Blades finish, Rogan was screaming about this phantom uppercut that didn't land. The dude just held on to a single too long, and instead of adjusting, panicked and got finished a hammer fist. And I think if Romanov came out and was like, I'm going to take him down and out-grapple him, I actually think he might. I think it would be really, really hard for Almeida to sweep Romanov. And if Romanov gets the top position, I think he can finish him. So am I betting Alexander Romanov plus 260? I am not. Because, like what Curtis Blades did, many wrestlers do with these jiu-jitsu guys, and they choose, okay, I'm going to sprawl and brawl and keep the fight upright, etc. And I just think that is the absolute worst path you could take. If Romanov tries to do that, I think Almeida will very likely win this fight. Because Almeida, whatever else you want to say about him, is he as good a pure wrestler as Romanov? No. But he's a much better athlete, and he's much, much more explosive and changes levels very fast. And rewatching Romanov and Espino, I do not think Romanov's got a lot on bottom when he's put there. I like Blades. I even talked about it on this show. I was like, Blades is going to get taken down and he's going to get up. I was very, very confident Blades was going to get back to his feet when he got taken down. I am not very confident that Alexander Romanov is getting back to his feet if he gets taken down. I really he looked like a complete fucking fish against Espino, and Espino is not nearly as talented a top game grappler as Almeida is. So I just kind of feel like yes, if you tell me he's going to come out and grapple Jailton, then yeah, I'd be pretty thrilled about it. But he didn't grapple Blagojevanov for 2 rounds. I really don't think he's going to take that approach. And if he doesn't, the price is it's not going to look like a very good bet. So I don't know. I mean, if he gets the plus 300, I'll bet him. I'll take the small poke on it. But I just have a feeling Jailton's going to come out there and run through him. What do you think?
Similar thoughts that he's going to run through him. So first, we'll talk about the Juan Espino fight that you had just mentioned. That's pretty much the only instance where Romanov is on bottom, and when he's put on bottom, he goes for a key lock, and then Juan Espino instantly mounts him. Mounts him. And I'm thinking, well, that I could absolutely see that, envisioning that happening here. Almeida instantly mounting right after that. Like you talked about with Almeida being more faster, more athletic, no doubt about it. And I think that's why if he is taken down early in the fight, I think he can just pop up.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think only one of these two guys, being Almeida, can have grappling success later in the fight.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you go. Okay. I was gonna say whatever people want to say about Blades, he's been finished a couple times in his career, but the guy's a fighter, man. Like, he is not a quitter. We've seen that over and over in his career. He'll bang with guys he shouldn't bang with and get knocked out because of it. But Romanov, we have seen this guy wilt very hard before,
Yeah, and I feel like people are like having like a little bit of FOMO and not betting Blades because like Blades was a great defensive wrestler, great cardio, just an overall great test for Almeida at plus money.
And a great athlete.
Yeah. And now you're getting not a great athlete, a guy that doesn't have good cardio, a guy that's shown he's a bad nail. He hasn't shown any kind of success outside of round 1, in my opinion. Round 2, round 3, he's not winning these rounds.
No, so, yeah. And the other thing is that sprawl. Like I was watching for the Espino fight to see, like, does he sprawl? His sprawl's fucking slow, man. If he does not, again though, if he comes out and tries to grapple Almeida, I think he can. I really do. But I don't think he's going to, and I do not think he is going to stop Jonathan's double legs if he does not put him on the back foot.
I think Almeida finishes him. I have the under 2.5 in a parlay. It's minus 240.
Yeah, I don't hate it, honestly. It's also kind of crazy when you talk about the under, because it's like, it sounds like crazy juice, but
these guys
Almeida's
under 1.5s are usually minus 240.
That's what I'm saying. Like Almeida Lewis was like minus 2,500 not to go the distance. That's like every one of his fights.
The Blades under was like completely generous, and I know a lot of people that ended up betting that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And now it's like minus 240, and you have two guys who are both potentially wilty, and one of them who is a turbo guesser. Like it is a good. He's saying, thinking about max betting Zaleski plus 3.5. What's the number on that? I don't think that's that crazy, honestly. What's the price?
I'll look on DraftKings for you real quick and probably find that.
Yeah, let me know.
Unless you can type it in there faster than I can find it.
As Paul just said in the chat, the big risk, in my opinion, is Brown knocking him out. If they go the distance, I think that'll hit at minus 140. It's not horrible. I would not personally like max bet it. I can see the angle if you think he's unlikely to get KO'd, because I think like if he doesn't get if they go the distance, I feel like Zaleski plus 3.5 is like minus 300 if they go, or minus 400 if they go the distance. It's just how much KO equity do you build in for Brown? Because there's probably a solid amount of it. So
and the over 2.5 is minus 150. So.
Yeah, honestly, if you like that, I'd actually rather bet the over 2.5, because I really don't think Zaleski's finishing Brown. It's not impossible, but I'd be surprised. Moving on, we got the feature bout of UFC 302. We got Big Mouth Kevin Holland taking on Lord Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. Current price, Kevin Holland is minus 280. Whew! A lot of Holland's team. Come back on Oleksiejczuk plus 240. What do you think, Lags?
I think Kevin Holland finishes Mikey O here. I just feel like that Mikey's forward pressure, his come forward style, looking to bang, is perfect recipe for Holland to just intercept him coming down the middle and finding a finish, either hurting him, finding a neck, or just finishing him straight up on the feet. I know we were talking about just pricing with the unders before, and this was a fight five fights back now, but Oleksiejczuk, when he was fighting Sam Alvey, the under 2.5 rounds was minus 130 when we were talking about that, which seems like a crazy price in hindsight. Yeah. But like Alvey wasn't finished going up to that. To me, Holland minus 105 inside the distance, which is what I played to win a unit. I think that's very generous considering 21 of his 25 wins are inside the distance. And I just feel like in general, he's a potent finisher. Most of his wins, like I said, are going to come by finish. And just how the fight's going to play out, I feel like he finishes probably closer to 60% personally.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I don't really. People love Mikey O, but
I like Mikey O.
I mean, he's fun,
not bad.
But he doesn't have. With Kevin Holland, you need to either be able to wrestle or like compete with him at long range, and the physical gap between the two makes me think, Mikhail wants to be inside, ripping the body, ripping shots at your head, not trying to play an outside kicking game because he doesn't really kick well at all. He's given up 3 inches of height, 7 inches of reach here to Holland. I think Holland's the faster fighter. I think he is I don't know if he's the sharper striker, but I think he knows how to use his length and use, his janky style pretty effectively. He hits pretty hard.
I would say
I
he's a
just
sharper striker personally. I think Mike Yola coming forward, it's a lot of wild
yeah.
power hooks.
And the thing is, even if he gets in his preferred range, which is up close and tight with Holland, Holland throws so much nasty shit in there, like knees, elbows, stuff that can really damage you. I mean, we've seen Mike Yo get hurt to the body a million times, and Holland throws nasty knees to the body and tight. So I just don't see a lot of places where he can be safe with Holland in this fight. Now, it doesn't mean he can't beat him. He can knock him out. Or if he suddenly rocks up with elite durability, maybe he can win a decision if it goes 15 minutes. But I'm kind of with you. I just feel like there's so many intangibles here that favor Holland on the metrics, on the size. Stylistically, Holland's the only guy with grappling upside here. I just think this is one of the easier tests Holland has had in recent years. We saw him go to a split with Jack, and this is like Kmart Jack Della Maddalena, if we're being honest. That is what Mike Yo is here. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think Holland finishes him. I don't know if I'll bet it. I don't really have much interest in this fight. It should be fun while it lasts, but I think it's Holland. Moving on, Sean Strickland taking on Paulo Costa. Current price, Sean Strickland is big juice here. Maybe a little money coming in on Costa. Minus 238 on Strickland. Come back on Costa. Plus 203. I kind of like the over and that goes the distance here. I don't have a strong feeling on a side. Honestly, if Strickland wasn't coming off, I lost in the title fight, I might have some interest. Maybe probably not at this price, but at the earlier prices. But I don't really. I've started to realize that like a lot of these guys, they come off big losses and they just come out flat for whatever reason in their next fight, and I kind of think that's a possibility for Strickland in this fight. With that said, look, Costa could KO him early in the fight, I guess, but I think Costa's power always has been pretty overrated throughout his entire career, in part because of the way he's built. But the truth is, outside of like cans, he hasn't knocked out, many good fighters at all. And, Costa will gas and slow down. It happens every fight, but he also does a very, very good job of kind of fighting through that. And he's very, very durable. I think it's a good fight for Strickland. Like, he might have to deal with some shit early and, look to get in live on Strickland. Maybe past a round or two would be ideal if you could get like minus 150 or something. But I do think once Costa starts to slow, we know Strickland won't. He's going to be there pumping the jab, throwing teep kicks, stuff like that. And I think he's probably going to win a comfortable decision on the back end. The reason I like the over, though, is just because Strickland is never really assertive with anybody. He throws a lot of volume, but he doesn't sit down on his shots much. He's not really looking to KO guys. And against a durable guy like Costa, he's just going to be trying to, outpoint him, really, for most of this fight. And on the Costa side, Strickland's head strike defense is so good, and he's taller and a good bit longer in this fight. I just don't think Costa's going to have many opportunities to land like huge shots. Obviously, it could happen, but when I'm looking at this and I'm looking at the GTD price, which is at the moment plus 125, I kind of think it's like 60%. It should be like minus 150 to go the distance, or even minus 125. But I think there's a decent amount of meat on the bone. I don't think Costa's KOing at a high rate at all. And I don't really think Strickland is either. He doesn't KO many people late. He throws a lot of volume, but this isn't Max Holloway who's going to come after you crazily aggressively, throwing insane, body work and stuff. Yeah. I like to go the distance here. What do you think?
Yeah, plate starts round 4, minus 132. Similar thoughts to you in terms of like the fight extending. I just think that Costa KOing him is probably your only threat that you're worrying about early on in the fight, which again, like you had already mentioned, I think is pretty undervalued, I should say.
Yeah, agreed.
I think Strickland, honestly, 4-5 decision at plus 125 is not bad.
That is pretty good, actually. I'd be a little surprised if he finished him before round 4.
And I do like your, like you said, about betting him live minus 150. But yeah, I think that if you can get that price, obviously, if Costa ends up winning that first round, second round maybe. But I think pre-fight 4-5 decision at plus money, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, I agree with that. That is a really, really good line on Strickland there.
On FanDuel.
Because it is. Yep. It's obviously not impossible. He finishes Costa before that, but it does seem remarkably unlikely to me. Like, his implied winning percentage is 70%, and that's 45%. I don't think him knocking out Costa in the first 3 rounds is anywhere near a third of his win equity in this fight. That just doesn't add up to me personally. So
I was going to say you could even take like round 1 off of that. So it's probably either like second round or third round. It's like, okay, do you think?
Right. And I mean, he did hurt Izzy, but he hasn't. I mean, I'm actually kind of curious. Like the only other guy I can really remember him hurting bad, like he finished Abus, but he just does.
That's bad.
Abus, I mean that the only other guy he's even knocked down. Brendan Allen, who's a punching bag, and that's not. This is not Brendan Allen, you know. Nordine Taleb, I mean, I'm with you. I think 4-5 decision is really good here. Moving on, the main event of the evening, really kind of an underwhelming main event. One of the reasons I will not be attending the card. Just, I mean, look at this fucking main card.
The price. Well, I was gonna say the price, really, too. Like,
it's crazy.
Tickets are starting at like $500.
I just don't get it though. The card I went to in AC a couple months ago was better than this card. Honestly, who is paying for this?
Other than the main event though, but it's also
chick main event. But like, look at the main card. -175 is the closest line fight. Then it's a -310, -280, -238, -700. Like that is not, bro. Why are you charging $80 for people to see that? I mean, it's just not, I don't know. Not for me. I'm obviously going to watch it, but this is not the best pay-per-view. And it's certainly not worth $500 to sit in the upper deck of.
No, this is the EV tax.
What's the name of the stadium?
Prudential Center.
Prudential, that's it. Prudential is actually pretty nice, but Newark is not so nice.
But getting out of Newark after the pay-per-view is done, it's going to take you 2
Well, that's the other thing. So last time I was there, I'm leaving. I walked about a mile trying to get an Uber to pick me up. I only live like a half hour away, and I couldn't find an Uber. Everyone that I grabbed immediately canceled. I ended up basically taking a train to Secaucus Junction at 2:30 in the morning with like 100 homeless people and 100 drunk 20-year-olds. That was basically the train. It was like, this is my fucking nightmare. Got an Uber from Secaucus, which is about a 40-minute drive from my house. So I didn't get home till like 4 a.m. Didn't get to sleep till 4:30. Woke up by my kid 2 hours later. It was hell on earth. If I'm doing that, the card better be much fucking better than this. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, the main event. What do you think, Legs?
Well, first, I will say the only people I think that are paying to see this fight specifically are watching Dustin's retirement fight. Like, I don't see a ton of excitement in this fight. I think Makhachev runs through him. I think he submits him in the second, third round. I don't think Dustin's going to be able to stop the grappling onslaught that is going to come his way. But I think that's already priced him with the -700. I think most of us are thinking similar thoughts here. And so I guess the only other thing I'm going to add here is that I have the doesn't start round 5 to close out that parlay at -123.
I mean, I would love for Dustin to win this fight. It would be a great like swan song to win his third title fight. But I don't see it.
You mean win his first ever title?
Yeah, but the third title fight though. But then they would make. But I mean, if he did that, then we'd get the McGregor Poirier title matchup in all likelihood. I don't think my soul could handle Conor losing to him again.
Or we could get a Max Dustin rematch.
Yeah, or that. But it's I really just don't see it. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible. I think he can knock Islam out. Islam is. I don't think he's the most durable guy in the world. I think Islam's striking is very, very underrated for one. I think Volkanovski is. I mean, Poirier is a very, very good striker, but I think Volkanovski is a clearly better striker than Poirier, and Islam was. Even in the first fight, was more than competing on the feet with him. And in terms of the grappling, it's just, I'll put it to you this way. Benoit Saint Denis got to multiple, like 3 separate super dominant positions in that fight and just fucked it up and lost position. Islam's not losing those positions. Maybe he won't finish out of there and Dustin will tough it out, but Islam gets the back mount, Dustin's not getting up. If Islam gets to a body triangle, he's not getting up. If Islam gets to half guard, Dustin's probably not getting up. So it's my view is, is Dustin Poirier about to show off the biggest defensive wrestling upgrade we've ever seen in UFC history at 35 years old? Maybe, but I doubt it. I would be surprised by it. I will say Islam Makhachev is the mush of the week this week. So if Rich has something there, it could be an epic night on Saturday. I would honestly love to see it, but I've thought about it a million ways. I bet Dustin against Khabib when they fought, but one, that was obviously not value. Khabib kind of just rolled through him outside of the kind of close guillotine attempt. And two, I think Islam's actually better than Khabib. He's a much more well-rounded fighter. He's a much better striker than Khabib was, and I think he's a bit bigger than he is.
John, hot take from Mr. Stargarian here.
Is it that hot though? Is it that hot?
I think a lot of people it might be. I'll be honest.
Habib beat Ally Aquinta, Conor McGregor, and Dustin Poirier during his title run. Let's be real for a second here, okay? Makhachev is very, very different. What's up there, Woody Bud? That is my personal take. I think he is a better fighter. I think he may be more fragile and a little bit more willing to scrap than Khabib was, to be honest, that could be a path for Dustin because Islam is willing to scrap a bit with guys. He did with Charles for a bit. But I just think if he fights intelligently, it's just hard to see many paths. Not impossible. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just very, very hard for me to kind of wrap my head around any consistent path for Dustin winning this fight. I mean, I looked at the props, but it's like one of those things where I think Islam's going to sub him, but also if Islam gets the back mount on him, he could just KO him like Bobby Green, right? Or if Dustin does what he did with Charles, where he's afraid to give up his back and just kind of lets him pound him from top position, he could just get finished via strikes. Or Islam could just win.
Charles subbed him.
But round 2 of that fight, though, he ended up on his back, and he didn't want to give his back up, and Charles spent the entire round dropping elbows on his face.
Yeah.
So I think that's plausible. It's just even money or favorite money on a subline is really, really tough for me to get to. Because if you're betting it, it means you think he's going to get to dominant positions routinely, which I tend to agree with. But also, if he's getting to dominant positions routinely and he doesn't sub him after the first couple attempts, who's to say he doesn't just start dropping ground and pound and finish the fight, Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's Islam. I'm not too excited about it. I hope Dustin wins. I think it would be much more fun for MMA.
Oh, no. Definitely
Dude, I am tired of Russia. I'm tired of Dagestan, okay? I am tired of them dominating the sport.
The only thing I will say, though, about Islam and his whole title reign, I just wish he's fighting actual 55ers. That's the only thing I want to see going
You mean
forward.
actual top fivers?
True. But 55ers. Yes.
Well, Dustin's a 55er.
Before Dustin, though. Look at who.
Oh, yeah, I know. Volk twice.
Volk twice. Charles to win the belt.
Well, Charles is a pretty big 55er now.
Right, but I'm saying once he won the title.
It is ridiculous, the way they've match made Islam here, and how it's also ridiculous that Dustin is getting a title shot over his fucking teammate, who actually has a reasonable argument in Gamrot for a title fight. Dustin has no argument for fighting for a title right now.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think Max has a bigger argument than Dustin.
What's this Khabib? Oh, Khabib and his corners making you confident Islam, not the minus 700 or the giant grappling advantage.
The Eagles
I am confident Islam wins, but don't parlay this shit. Don't bet the sub. I if anything, I would bet doesn't go. But even that, like I said, Dustin's enough of a jiu-jitsu player that it's not something I'm uber confident in. And ironically, I say that, but I also don't really want to bet the over 2.5 because I do think Makhachev's going to basically get to a dominant position every round. So it would be the sweatiest goes the distance in history, if you bet it and hit it. So yeah, it's Islam. This card sucks. Let's be honest. Yeah. Hopefully there's some good live spots. Next week's card I like quite a bit more. Real quick before we hop off here. They are using new gloves this week. Islam said they're actually stiffer, and apparently they're only 3 ounces. I was talking to Narco Cop about this. I think you were in the chat too. But it should, in theory, make the impact of shots in the bigger weight classes especially a lot more significant, it's kind of something interesting and to monitor for the future because it is possible we could end up in a situation where the market's underpricing finishes for a little bit until they adjust the new gloves. Like, I mean, it doesn't sound like much 4 ounces to 3 ounces, but that's a 25% difference. That could like lead to maybe a 3 to 7% swing in the odds before the market catches on to it, which is pretty significant. So it is worth monitoring. It's something I'll be monitoring pretty closely. Are we seeing a lot more people get hurt, especially in fights that we don't expect people to get hurt in? But yeah, Lags, you have anything to add?
The gloves look sweet. They're a cool.
They do look
addition.
sweet.
I kind of wish I would be going to the card, at least like we talked about earlier. I mean, tickets were a little bit more affordable for what we got going on here. I'm not seeing
Weren't they a lot cheaper last year for Cejudo Aljo? I'm pretty sure. What did we pay? $250 for
I would say that's what I was going to say. I paid like $250, $260, I think, and we had what, 3 title fights?
3 title fights, or don't? No, it was a good card though.
It was,
but yeah, I guess Islam's a draw or Dustin's a draw. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me why they're so expensive, but
I'd say
I just don't. Here's the thing. I would sack up and pay the money if the card was better. But it's like, you're not going. Most of the other guys we chat with aren't going, and the tickets are $500, and the card is just a juice fest. That's just not really something that's extremely intriguing to me. But yeah, guys.
I was going to say, like, if this is a pay-per-view, I'm looking like, like 6-7 bets, like great fights, great, this and that. Like, oh,
some Phil Hawes sprinkled in, like,
Yeah. Some Chris Barnett.
He has a fight, doesn't he? Didn't they just book Barnett? It's a hilarious fight. I'm almost positive. Hold on. Let me see if I can find it. Yes, I think he has a fight booked. I'm almost positive.
Jeez.
I'm almost positive. Let me see if I can find it. This real quick before we hop off here. I like next week's card way, way, way better from a betting perspective and a watchability perspective. Damn it, I can't find it, but I'm almost positive he has a hilarious fight booked right now. But yeah, guys, thanks for coming out this weekend or today. Good luck this weekend if you have a lot of bets. I won't. Good luck if you're following us or you're fading us, whatever. Drop a like, subscribe. We'd appreciate it. We'll be back same time next week. Much more fun card for UFC Louisville to talk about. So I'm excited to get it done. Actually, the next 2 fight night cards are both quite good. So a decent run of cards here in general coming up. We have the Louisville. Then we have Tyra Perez. Then there is the Chimaev Whitaker, which is an afternoon card. Nice little, brunch and mimosas and fights type of card. That'll be exciting. And then we have McGregor Chandler. So it's a good month of fights coming up. Sadly, it's being kicked off by this shit. But again, thank you all for coming out tonight, guys. We'll see you next week. Take it easy. Peace.